Welcome to the Fourth Row Podcast, your exclusive source for 2A basketball. And now, your hosts, coming to you from the Slim Force studio, Andy and Benny Hill.
Welcome to the Fourth Row Podcast, the only podcast dedicated solely to 2A sports here in the stormy state of Utah.
Notice you said sports.
Sports. We've turned the page.
Basketball's over.
Even though
threw me for a loop there.
Even though basketball has been, March Madness has been crazy.
I think I've watched about 25 hours of basketball since Thursday.
Oh, it's crazy. A lot of stuff going on. I did go out and watch some baseball this weekend. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm your host, Andy Hill. I'm here with the coach, Benny Hill, in the Slim Force studio, sponsored by Security National. It's going to take a minute to get past the basketball thing.
Yeah. Well, I think you were probably in it. I can see your sunburnt face. So
yeah.
I think you are fully immersed in baseball.
So last week, you talked about how you went to the track meet, and you can get sunburn without. I don't think I saw the sun yesterday. I don't think the sun ever came out.
You get sunburnt in the shade.
Apparently so.
Or in the clouds.
I got torched. I had a beanie on, and I had two jackets on, and I was freezing, and my face got sunburned. That's how it goes. We'd like to thank our good friend Chris Jorgensen in the Ephraim office for once again being our title sponsor. For all your mortgage needs, give him a call, 283-3000, turning houses into homes. Just a reminder, the Fourth Row Podcast is still the number one 2A podcast in the state of Utah. I've lost track of how many weeks running. It doesn't matter because we're still the only one, and we're the number one.
Undefeated.
Undisputed. The audio version of the podcast will release usually Sunday night, with the YouTube releasing later on sometime.
This week I had big plans of doing some YouTube episodes, and like I said, I got zapped up with basketball.
That's okay.
This week, though. My goal's this week. But all the audios go up Sunday night.
Yep, so we'll always be on there. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels at Fourth Row Media. If you want to go back and check out some of the old podcasts, check us out on YouTube, or if you're on teamhive.live looking up some baseball games now or basketball games.
Are they broadcasting baseball games?
They are, yeah.
Not very nice.
Yeah, so there was a couple of them.
Robert Lovell getting after it?
I know Robert Lovell was out in Monroe and Richfield this weekend, and I know they'll be out on the circuit. They usually do a couple games a week.
Oh, very nice.
Making the Central Utah circuit. So excited to do that. What we got going on tonight?
Tonight, we're going to dive into the regions.
Okay.
East and West team breakdown, highlight some players, the coaches, players for each team, some impact players. Generally, at the 2A level, the impact players are pitchers. They usually control the game. So anyway, we're going to break down each region team by team.
All right. Sounds good. Before we get to that, how was the track meet yesterday?
Track meet was nice. It was over in Millard.
Cold?
Not really. Well, we got over there. It was probably high 30s maybe, 30, close to 40. But the sun was out. There was no wind. So with a hoodie on and a beanie, I was good.
Good. And
the sun came out. Well, the sun was out the whole time, so it warmed up a little bit in the afternoon, but it was nice, like a hoodie weather.
Good. So
this time of the spring, if you can get a hoodie weather and throw a beanie on, you're good to go.
Yeah, money. I went out and caught some baseball games yesterday. I was out in Monroe, and yesterday morning it was actually really pleasant. The wind wasn't blowing. The sun wasn't out, but it felt nice. It didn't feel super cold. So it was a little chilly, and then in the afternoon, the sun did peek out a little bit, and it actually felt really nice.
Yeah, when that sun's out, you can get it on your face a little bit. It does feel good. I know a lot of these teams are suffering from the weather. We'll talk about that as we go through each of these teams. Some of them are having a hard time even getting games in. And this early on, when you do get games, sometimes it's 30 degrees, 40 degrees, the wind's blowing. They're just getting through games. So I think this weekend was at least bearable to get through with some enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're getting some in. They're still getting a lot of them getting hit with the weather bug this year. But games are taking off. Yeah,
so I just went through and I got, the records for each team as I was doing my prep for this weekend. Some teams, some of them are almost halfway through their schedule. It's crazy how fast it goes this early on when you're playing 3 games or 4 games in a Friday, Saturday setup. The games go by quick.
Yeah, that's true.
My other goal is, this is totally off the subject.
What's that?
Is to try to eliminate the word or ah when I'm talking. You ever notice you go listen to podcast, you listen to your voice, You think, oh, man, why do you keep saying that?
My word is fantastic. I listened to one the other day. When I was coming back from the baseball games, and I say fantastic way too much. I got to come up with another
absolutely,
adjective.
100%, absolutely. Anyway, great weekend at track.
All right,
it was fun.
I heard a couple kids qualified for state.
Yeah, Jet ran really well in the 100 and 200. Cody Hammond from Gunnison ran really well. Our good friend Michael Ralphs from the Miller Eagles basketball team. You remember him? Great role player for the Eagles. He's a fantastic runner, a mile runner. He's a distance guy. He gets out and cooks. He had a great meet as well.
Nice. And I did see, I only know this because they're the one team that posts on Instagram, a bunch of Kanab kids. I'm not sure where they were this weekend, but they
hosted a meet at home in Kanab.
They had a bunch of kids qualify.
Yeah, and Travis Stewart, the guy, he's cooking. He won the meet down there. I didn't see if he ran the 100 Jet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was cooking in the 200 again, so he's back on his game.
I saw Brown. What was his name? Played basketball. Ran the
4
100 for Kanab.
Oh, Derek Brown?
Derek Brown.
Was he on the 100?
Yeah.
Okay. They got great athletes.
Bunch of relays down there. I saw Riley Little was in one of them, and
but Kanab's track and field team, and there's several others in 2A, but that one in particular, they do a fantastic job of getting their athletes out. Now, baseball is a big deal in Kanab, but so is track and field, and they do a great job of highlighting their athletes, as you notice on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Do a great job.
Yeah. All right, well, let's roll into the regions. Fortunately or unfortunately, there's only 2 regions, the East and West. Let's start with the East, which is really the teams in the kind of the Northeast, kind of the traditional Region 16 with little teams added in there.
With some added in, yes. Let's just start at the top right here. See, I go with my the South Sevier Rams.
All right,
returning state champions, South Sevier Rams. I got a kick out of. Now, obviously, we get a lot of our information. You visited with Coach Baker over the weekend, and we talked to some parents, and we're familiar with the kids, but obviously, a lot of this information is going to come from the Deseret News. They do a good job of collecting information from coaches in their preseason capsules. So you got South Sevier in the 2A East region listed as the number 1 team. And on the returning contributors, there's a lot of players.
It's basically all their team from last year.
The same team from last year. So they finished last year with 20-3 record, 10-2 in region. They finished ranked number 1 in the RPI. They won the state championship, beat the Parowan Rams in the state championship. Returning contributors, Keegan Heath, Riley Barney, Tate Brown, Ridge Tebbs, Tyson Robb, Payson Mitchell, Peyton Ingram, Benjamin Northrup, Canyon Okerlund, Riker Freeman, Stockton Roberts, and Brace Brindley. Yeah. So that's a whole roster. I think you count those up, there's probably about 12 names there. What that tells me is Coach Baker obviously has a deep, deep team, and he's very interested in getting all these guys action, as listing them as all his contributors. He wants them all involved.
Yeah, it was interesting. I caught their game yesterday afternoon. It was a 3 o'clock game on a Saturday, and interesting story. There's some interesting background where they're playing. They played at the City Fields, and it's this tight little field that they play on. It's very intimate over there, but easily 200 fans on a Saturday afternoon come out and watch South Sevier play on a cold Saturday afternoon. It was a lot of fun.
Historically, just from our era of baseball and through the years, South Sevier has always been a powerhouse in basketball. But it's obvious they've become a powerhouse in baseball as well, and they love baseball in South Sevier.
Oh yeah, you can. I was so impressed with the amount of fans.
By the way, I like your hat.
Yeah. Shout out to Haley Tibbs for hooking me up.
Oh, bingo.
Ridge's mom. A couple things. Number one, I think we've talked about this a little bit. When we coached Gunnison baseball years ago, we were lucky enough to go back to back. That second year was really, really tough. And so I was interested. I was just texting Coach Baker today and just saying, all right, what's your focus for this year? I thought this was really good. And he says, when you ask what we're focusing on with the boys, it's about sticking to the plan, not pressing, staying true to who we are as a team. So solid, I think that says a lot. As these guys go out this year, being 20-3 last year, coming back this year, they know the target's on their back. Everybody's gunning for South Sevier. I think they know that, but I think these guys are ready for that. They're built for that. They ran last year. They had a tough opening game with Kanab last year. They were on the ropes. They found a way to came back, and then they just rolled through the state tournament. So I think these guys are ready to go this year. They'll have some challenges along the way.
But it's a mentally tough group, and the one thing that South Severe has if you can score runs, you can win any game in 2A. Because even if your pitching fails, however, they're loaded at pitching as well. Mm-hmm. But if pitching does fail, if you can score runs, eventually you can outscore people. And then when you get into the state finals and state playoffs, you just keep scoring runs, and you can't be beat.
Yeah.
So they are the South Severe Rams on paper and proven. They are loaded.
Yep, true. And really quick, just looking at their numbers from last year, almost 12 runs a game they're scoring and only giving up 4. When you're doing that, you're going to win a lot of games.
Absolutely.
Although one of the games they lost last year was to our hometown
Gunnison Bulldogs. Yeah.
So you just never. Baseball is one of those games that usually, unlike basketball, or football, the best team usually is going to pull away. In baseball, somebody can go out and throw a gem, and you have an off day, and you're done. So, but by all indications, South Severe is going to be a tough team this year.
Yeah. So looking forward to them. Next team in the East region, the Gunnison Valley Bulldogs.
Gunnison Bulldogs, coached by Max Sanders, who was a part of that back-to-back state championship team in 07-08. It's funny, I stopped by their game yesterday afternoon. I actually watched one on Friday. It was too cold. We just sat out in the outfield and watched it. And it's different watching a baseball game out that far. But yesterday afternoon, I was down along the first baseline, and I could hear Christian just yelling the whole time. It was just fun to see him. The Bully Dogs are playing well. They got a good team coming back from last year. They got a lot of experience. I look forward to them making a run this year.
Before we get to that, I should have mentioned South Severe currently is sitting at 3-0 on the season. They've scored 35 runs, given up 7. That's kind of what we thought South Severe was going to be, scoring a heck of a lot of runs and having good pitching on the mound. So Gunnison Bulldogs, moving on to them, sitting with a record of 4-3. They've got 7 games in thus far. They've scored 45 runs, and they've given up 40 runs. Returning contributors for the Bulldogs, power hitter Jace Sorensen, do-it-all Zach Brackett, Easton Newman, Coulter King, Parker Sanders, Kyler Cox. That's 6 returning seniors. I think all these kids saw varsity time as starters last year as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Coach Sanders lists some newcomers: Talon Zufeld, Kylan Crouch, Peyton Sanders, and one that we all want to watch play, who's played a lot of baseball, is our good friend Braxton Pickett.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Sanders actually today, and I didn't see this, but he said Braxton pitched a couple innings, threw hard, played well. I'm sure that's a little bit of an adjustment when you're still coming into high school baseball, making that transition, in as a freshman. I expect a lot of good things out of Braxton.
Braxton, incoming freshman, like I said, he's at our house quite a bit. A great young man, great skills, very, very good athlete. So it'll be exciting to see what he can do for the Bulldogs. Last year, the Bulldogs, very uncharacteristically for the Bulldog, finished with a losing record at 10-16. 6-6 in region. They finished at 9 in the RPI. They lost in the first round to Milford. And here's a telltale stat of the Bulldogs last year. They scored 7 runs per game, gave up over 8 runs per game.
Yeah. And I expect to see that change this year. I think with Easton Newman, I saw him, he threw the ball well. Zach Brackett's going to throw the ball well. Braxton Pickett's going to give him some big innings. So I think you're going to see that improve this year. I think their defense is better.
Yeah, I think Coulter King does a fantastic job behind the plate.
Does a great job.
Defensively, blocking balls, handling pitchers, receiving the ball, throwing down, keeping runners, throwing runners out. Does a great job with that. So up the middle, they're going to be solid. It will just be depending on getting some solid pitching, I think, because Gunnison's going to score runs.
Yeah, I do think they're going to improve from last year. Most of these guys that are playing were there last year. I think they move on. They've got some great coaching. They've got some good energy. I like what I see out of the Bulldogs. I think they can make a run this year.
Next up, San Juan Broncos.
The San Juan Broncos. Interesting enough, I was texting Coach Nielsen today, and we were reminiscing about the old days of San Juan baseball. Back when we had
Was he around then?
He graduated in 03. But he said his first year was Coach Bauer's first year. And I said, whoa, we had some battles with Coach Bauer's.
You had Coach Bauer's last year?
It was his first year in 2003.
Yeah, gotcha. That was been prior to that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's probably when San Juan was just starting to get ramped up.
So we were talking about the height of San Juan Bronco baseball. Wow,
they had a cooking in the early 2000s.
They were good. They were as good as anybody around. They had some fantastic players. So I had a great texting visit with Coach Nielsen today. He's excited about his team. There's the one thing I think you'll see with the Broncos that they did last year that they'll do again this year. They can put a lot of runs up. Their challenge last year was they just didn't have a lot of solid pitching, but they have got a lot of guys coming back this year.
And they bounced down from 3A to 2A last year. And I can't remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they thought they were going to see a slight dip in their performance from losing a lot of players the previous year. But they ended up at 3 in the RPI last year, so they had a solid season of 15-9, 8-4 in region. I mean, a great season for them. They got eliminated, oddly enough and surprising, by the North Summit Braves. Nipped them in the first round of the playoffs last year. So last year they put up 9.8, almost 10 runs per game. That's second in 2A. Yeah. So they can score it. And defensively, not so bad. Gave up 7 runs per game. That put them in 7th in 2A. So they scored a lot, but they gave up a fair amount also. So they'll probably the same this year. Returning contributors: Garrett Young, Jersey Nieves, Colin Baker, Ian Johnson, Parker Schneider, Talon Mendoza. So you got 4 seniors, a sophomore and a junior on returners, and some incoming players, some young kids, sophomores: Jake Ivins, Branton Bethea, and Cooper Palmer.
Yeah, and Coach Nielsen talked a lot about as we were texting back and forth today, he talked a lot about his younger kids, and he talked about their deep in pitching, which he said they, admittedly said they've lacked in the recent years. He said if our guys can stay around the zone, we're a dangerous team. That's one thing at least at the 2A level. If you can score 10 points a game,
put up 10 runs a game,
you're going to win a lot of games just by virtue of putting that many up. So if their pitching comes around, watch out. I think the Broncos could be one of those teams that they kind of just lurking around. But again, last year they were 8-4 in region. So I think they were close last year. Excited to see what they're going to do this year.
No, they had a lot of enthusiasm with their season last year as well. So I just look on their returning contributors and their newcomers. You've got 6 kids listed there as pitchers. So I think everyone's figuring out you've got to develop pitchers to win, a state championship. You got to be deep.
Yep.
So San Juan Broncos. Next up, Duchesne Eagles.
Yeah.
Head coach Ryan Goodliff in the 5th year. Duchesne had a great year last year.
Duchesne played really well last year.
Yeah, last year was their breakout year. Was last year the first year in 2A baseball for them, or did they play the year prior to that? Maybe. They finished great year, 17-9. Finished an 8-4 record in region as well. They finished 4 on the RPI. It's a great season for the Eagles. Offensively, scoring 9 runs per game, giving up 6 runs per game. That finished, so runs per game, they were ranked 4th in runs scored and 6th in runs given up. Returning contributors for the Eagles: Draker Goodliff, a do-it-all for them, junior. I don't think they have a senior on this team, do they?
They don't. They do not have a senior.
All juniors and below. So they're loaded for bear for the next 2 years. Draker Goodliff, Parker Crum, Cade Norman, Kyson Giles. Recognize some of these names from basketball. Newcomers: Connor Karen, Caleb Thompson, Jaden Mortensen, and Deshaun Johnson, basketball player as well.
So Duchesne's going to be good. They were good last year. I thought they played well. These are another team that got eliminated by Millard in the second round last year. There was a couple teams at the end of the season, we'll talk about those, North Summit and Millard, that just came out of nowhere at the end of the season.
Yeah,
and they did, yeah. Millard made a run there in the state tournament. But I think Duchesne, they've got a lot of experience. I think the thing that's going to make or break Duchesne this year is their pitching. If they can keep their pitching good, keep guys going. Obviously, it sounds like a standard cliche. You got to score a lot of runs and have good pitching, but sometimes those things are hard to come by.
Yes. Currently, right now, Duchesne sitting on 3-3. overall in games played, 26 runs scored at 27 runs given up, and sitting 3-3. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these, like I said, you recognize these names. They're basketball names. These are tough players, mentally tough players. And baseball is a mentally grinding, tough game. You got to be locked in for a short amount of time, then you got some time off, then you got to lock in again. Duchesne is a mentally tough team, so I think you're going to see the same thing out of the Eagles this year as last year.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. They're well coached. I saw them play Enterprise on Saturday morning. They got a good coaching staff. They got a lot of kids. I think they got a lot of promise there. If they can put things together, they're as good as anybody out there right now.
They came off an absolutely fantastic run in the state playoffs. Rolled to a fourth place finish. Had a very, very good chance of making it to the finals by knocking off Kanab.
Yeah.
So you've got some kids that are really, really excelling in tough pressure cooker situations in basketball, and they do the same thing in football. Probably the same in wrestling. If you got wrestling there, they're just a mentally tough group. Mm-hmm. They're going to do great things. Next up, North Severe Wolves. Head coach Josh Robinson in his 7th year. He's becoming a gray hair in baseball.
Seems like he just barely started.
He's enthusiastic. He loves what he does, and he loves his team. Currently, right now, let's go through last year. They finished 11-13. They finished with an 8-4 record in region as well. So they had a good region, good region run. Finished 8th in the RPI. They were eliminated by Beaver in the first round. Offensively, scored 8.9 runs per game. That was 5th in 2A. So the Wolves putting up some runs, and they gave up 7.9 runs per game, which put them, that was ranked 8th in 2A. The Wolves did lose some big-time players last year.
They did.
Big-time pitching.
Yeah.
Returning contributors this year, Kyson Bichard, Cannon Boswell, Hunter Hansen, Tyler Foote, and Riley Burr. Newcomers, May Sorensen, Caden Johnson, and James Crowley. Mm-hmm. Did you see the Wolves play at all this weekend?
I did not. I was out in Richfield and Monroe, so I did not catch the Wolves play. I know they had a rough weekend.
They're currently sitting at 0-5 on the season. 40 runs scored, 60 runs given up.
Yeah.
I did get a chance to visit with Coach Robinson to talk about his team, and obviously 0-5 is not the ideal start to a season. They are fighting the injury bug. Mm-hmm. He did mention they're missing Riley Burr, senior Riley Burr, who was a pitcher for them, to an injury. I did not confirm if that is going to be a season-long injury, but they're missing him. And another solid starting pitcher, Hunter Hansen, nursing a sore arm at this point right now. So when you're down multiple starting pitchers at the 2A level, it's going to be a struggle. And I think them sitting at 0-5, not super something to panic about immediately, because North Severe and Josh, they're going to be grinders. Mm-hmm. They're going to be scrappy. They're going to go grind games out, play small ball if they have to. Josh will figure it out, and North Severe will still win some games, but losing some teams that have limited pitching to begin with, and you lose 2 starters on the mound, that hurts.
Yeah, and I would say early in the season too, it's much easier to hit the ball than it is to get your pitchers ready. It's just
true.
I think traditionally it's easier just, hey, let's get out. You can hit the cage. You can get flowing pretty easy. If you got sore arms, they don't just change overnight, and so it takes some time with a lot of these teams. And baseball is so fast and so furious. A lot of these teams have played 8-9 games already.
Yeah,
you're halfway through the season. So if your guys you get hit with the injury bug, before you know it, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
and so I feel bad for teams like North Severe, where you get a couple guys that are hurt and you lose a couple games. Pretty soon the RPI comes out. And
when does the RPI come out?
I need to check. I honestly don't know.
Obviously, there's a minimum amount of games played, so I guess it'll be probably coming out pretty soon, I would suppose.
Yeah, baseball season's 9 weeks long, so we're already into week 2, and looking at the weather reports, we're storm all week, so it'll be interesting to see. I would imagine by next week the RPI will be out.
Coach Robinson, he makes a great point in our conversation, and that's simply put, losing games now stinks. You don't want to go down big, nor do you want to drop in the RPI, but all you got to do is get it right in May. If you can get it right in May, anyone can go on a run. We saw, like you mentioned, Millard went on North Summit, won some games in the state, knocked some teams off in the state playoffs. So you just got to get it right at the right time. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully they can get through the injury bug they're dealing with. But in the meantime, like I said, Coach Robinson, he's a talented coach. He's creative. He'll get his team scoring. Oh, yeah. He'll put the pieces together, and they'll be dangerous like always.
They'll be okay.
They'll be competitive. I think that rounds us out in the East region.
About the Braves.
Excuse me.
Actually, we got 2 more.
How dare I? They are 7. Gosh.
There's 7 in this region.
My apologies. North Summit Braves.
The North Summit Braves head coach Bo Morrill, who's in his 3rd year. I've known Bo for a while. If you've ever been around Coach Morrill, he's just an exciting guy.
Is he? I've never met. I need to meet him sometime. Yeah. I see him. I've seen him for years. I do need to meet him.
He's just a fun, upbeat guy. He keeps it real. He realizes where they are. You know, he said there's still got a foot of snow on their field up there in North Summit.
Yeah, they're fighting an uphill battle
in
Colville.
They may not play a home game all year long, which is going to be a challenge. Hopefully it gets warm. But
Side note. Do you remember playing on their field in high school? Did you ever play up there?
Oh, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. There was pine trees in the right field.
That's correct. They did not have an outfield fence.
But there was pine trees out there. Mm-hmm. Okay. I just want to I had this memory of pine trees being in right field.
Oh, yeah. That was interesting.
Rusty Baxter hitting the ball that just kept going forever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So just texting Coach Morrill tonight. You know, he says he got a bunch of kids coming back. Senior, his son, Wyatt Morrill. One of their big players. He said they got 5 returners: Tucker Pace, Tristan Ovard, Paxton Smith, who's their catcher, is a really good player. Cutler Blomquist, Easton Miller. They've got a couple sophomores: Easton Richens, Braxton Leffler. North Summit traditionally hasn't had a powerhouse baseball team. It's just one of those things. They play up north. They've always been a football, basketball school, big track school at North Summit. Yep. They're trying to turn that around, and I think Coach Morrill's got some exciting things. They were 4-16 last year, but they made a little bit of a run right there at the end in the state tournament and actually ended up playing at Kearns.
Got 2 wins in the playoffs last year.
And so for those...
Did they go to San Juan and get a win?
They went and got a win at San Juan, and then they ended up at Kearns. And so for those kids, they ended up having a great finish to the season. And so I think they're last year, they're offensively, they were almost dead last in 2A, 4 runs a game. They gave up 12. I think you're going to see a change in that. I don't think it's going to completely flip-flop. North Summit's going to surprise some teams. I think they're going to hit the ball. If their pitching comes around, they're going to win some games. And so I'm excited to see what Coach Morrill can come up with this year with the Braves.
Currently this year, they've got 4 games in. So I'm assuming, well, obviously they've all been on the road. Mm-hmm. 7 runs scored, 38 runs given up.
Yeah. So he said, they were in some games. A lot of early season. Still early season. It's hard.
Yeah,
to say.
You can't take a whole lot. Interesting to know. You look through these. South Sevier is the only undefeated team, and everybody else is 500 or below. Excuse me, Beaver. Beaver's sitting at 6-2, but really everyone's about 500 or below, dealing with weather, dealing with guys just getting in the groove, whatever the case may be. So,
yep. So I'm excited to see what North Summit has to.
That would be fun to see North Summit start knocking some teams off or making some noise. Yeah, it'd be good for them.
It'd be fun. And then the last team in the East region's the Monticello Buckaroos. I think they are the only team so far in 2A that has not played a game.
Yes, the other team has played 1. Pair 1 Rams have played 1. Buckaroos, none. Yeah,
so not a lot of information about the Buckaroos. Josh Keys is in his 2nd year. They struggled last year. They were 0-14. They were number 14 in 2A. They got eliminated by North Summit in the first round last year. Struggled offensively, defensively. Monticello is one of those programs that are just trying to get it going again over there.
And I think they probably battle with weather at this time of year, too. There's a lot of snow in Monticello.
There's a lot of snow over there right now. So don't know a whole lot about the Buckaroos other than excited to see them play this year.
Hopefully they are, so we'll see them in Gunnison. Mm-hmm. Well, not unless the doubleheader is down in Monticello. We may not see them up here.
That's true.
Let's look at the schedule and see. That wraps up the East region. Yeah. What do you think of the East region?
The East region to me, it's a lot like similar to Region 16 in basketball. It's pretty wide open, but there's one clear-cut favorite, and that's South Sevier.
Yeah.
I think they're out in front. With that being said, Gunnison knocked them off last year during region play. I think there's some teams that are really going to surprise some people. I think San Juan's going to be much improved. I think North Summit's going to be much improved. Gunnison, Duchesne, all the way through that region, I think there's going to be some fantastic games.
Absolutely. That's a tough region.
It's going to be very tough, even for South Severe. They've as good as South Severe and the level they're playing on, they've got some tough games every day that they're going to have to go out and win.
Bounce over to the West.
All right, the West. This is almost like your traditional Region 19 in basketball. Your Southern
pretty close
region.
to it. You got throw Millard in there and Milford, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's lead it off with the Enterprise Wolves.
The Enterprise Wolves.
You saw them this weekend.
Saw them play twice this weekend. A lot of changes. If there's one thing I noticed, this is kind of uncharacteristic for Enterprise. A lot of guys moving to a lot of different positions early on in the season. I think just trying to get some things filled out. Brady Crouch, who is obviously a big basketball player, hurt himself in the state tournament. Hurt his shoulder injury, an old shoulder injury. I talked to him for a minute on Saturday. Still a little banged up. He expecting to come back for region play, but they were missing him. I noticed they were trying to get a lot of pitchers in. Still early season. They did hit the ball well. They fielded the ball well. So Enterprise is Enterprise, right? They kind of do the same thing fundamentally. Very, very disciplined. Do things very well. They hit the ball well. Kyle
Bundley, he's the legend in 2A baseball, 16th year.
Mm-hmm.
See, last year, they finished 19-7, 8-2 in region. Great season last year for the Wolves. Finished number 2 in the RPI, and they did not fare so well at the state tournament.
No, I don't. I think by their own admission, they would say they didn't show as well as they would hoped in the state tournament. They got knocked off by Parowan in the semis.
Yes,
and then just really struggled to find any momentum the last couple days at the state tournament. And I think they would tell you the same thing. Just felt like kind of the wind got knocked out of their sails when they got knocked out of that semifinal game.
Semifinals or quarterfinals?
Semis.
Yeah,
by Parowan. Just kind of took them out. They lost some key players from last year, mainly Ryland Randall, who really led that team last year, both pitching and offensively. But they've got some solid bats. They've got some great pitching. Defensively, I think they're going to be solid. If you look at their numbers from last year, they score 8 runs a game, but they only give up 4 and just over 4. So if you can do that, you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, so they had very, very good pitching last year.
Yeah. So I look to them. They're going to be one of the top teams out there. They got a lot of younger players. They don't have a lot of seniors out there. Jake Sanderson obviously is going to play a lot of innings, solid pitching defensively, and then the rest of them really, you're talking about a whole bunch of juniors. Ty Staley does play.
Talk a couple names to run down here. Parker Staley, Trayson Randall, Carson Stauffer, Brady Crouch, and some newcomers, Braden Gardner and Waylon Woods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one name that wasn't on there who was playing a lot of innings was Ty Staley.
Okay.
So he's playing some first base for him.
He would be a good first baseman.
Yeah, big, tall, lanky.
Yeah.
They look good. Again, it's early season, so it's hard to say. Moving a lot of guys in different positions, which is what you expect early on to see. But I think Enterprise will be ready to play once region comes around.
Yeah, currently they're sitting at 4-4, and they have started playing region games. They are 0-1 in region. They have played Beaver thus far. They scored 50 runs. They've given up 41 runs. So well-rounded Enterprise team. I think what you'll see with Enterprise, they score runs, they put the ball in play, and they're going to play good defense and pitch.
Yep, your traditional Enterprise baseball.
Yep. Let's see, moving on from Enterprise, Kanab Cowboys.
The Kanab Cowboys.
Kind of curious and fun to watch the Cowboys this year, to see the Young Bucks take over.
Yeah, I had a great visit with Coach Brinkerhoff up at the state tournament a couple weeks ago.
A new era beginning.
And we talked about this briefly a couple weeks ago on the podcast. If there was an ideal transition between coaches, and in all seriousness, they did it as perfect as you could come. So Coach Mason Fox, who was the legend in 2A, fantastic coach. I can't say enough about Mason. Just a class act. Everything run state championship a couple years ago, and one of the best state championship games you'll ever see. But what he did is he got these young guys who were Kanab alum, He got Justin Norton and Craig Brinkerhoff, were both members of that state championship team, had them on his staff, and he kind of just sat in the background last year and as I watched, just kind of let those guys run the team and gained the rapport with the players, and you could see that you could tell what the transition was going to happen, and then he stepped away, and then Brinkerhoff takes over. I don't think you could have done it any better. Alumni taking over a program that they love, the kids already knew, seamless transition. I'm really excited. He's pumped. When I talk to him, he's pumped.
Yeah, great guy.
Those two, I think they're in great hands with Brinkerhoff and Norton down there. They made a great run. They had South Sevier on the ropes in the quarterfinals last year.
Yeah, in the playoffs, they're the only team that really did.
Yeah.
have them.
They had them, and you never know what to say. We'll talk plenty about the pitching rule this year, but a lot of decisions get made based on that pitching rule. But Kanab still had a fantastic state tournament. They made a run at the end, played well, and they've got a lot of guys coming back this year.
Offensively, they finished with scoring 7 runs per game, giving up 6 runs a game. So they're not scoring a whole lot of runs, but keeping runs down as well. They had very, very good pitching last year.
Yeah.
Braxton McQuivy was dynamic.
I think
on
he
the
was
mound.
the innings leader in 2A last year. He
won
was
a lot of
workhorse.
games. Yeah, pitched a lot of innings for them, but did a fantastic job. Returning contributors this year, Griffin Bone coming back. He threw some big time games for them as well. And Wadeland White is just a dynamic, fun player to watch.
Yep.
Newcomers, Brogan Verotsko. Did I say that right, Bones? Freshman. I think Bones knows him. Logan Veeder and our good friend Kel Glover. I don't know how you could put him as a newcomer on here.
Yeah, he played a lot. He was a starter last year. I don't know how they...
Maybe they're trying to keep him under the radar, but too late.
Yeah.
We already exposed Kel Glover.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic player as well. Going to do great things for the Cowboys.
They are going to be good. So the two players, like you mentioned, Braxton McQuivy had huge innings last year, and R.J. Mognet. R.J. Mognet, arguably the best catcher in 2A last year. They're going to miss those guys, so it'll be interesting to see who takes over that spot. Griffin Bone's going to throw a ton of innings for him. See who really takes over Mognet's spot offensively and defensively. He led that team last year.
Yeah, and Kanab, they're a fun team to watch. They play with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and they're not afraid to show it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might get a little obnoxious if you're the opponent in the other dugout, but they love to play. They play with a lot of enthusiasm, and Craig and Coach Brinkerhoff and Orton, they come from the same cloth.
Yep.
I mean, they were a wild bunch in the dugout when they were playing, so I think you'll see that same thing carrying on. Mm-hmm. It's always a lot of fun to follow the Cowboys. They finished last year 5th in the RPI. Currently, right now, they're sitting at 3-2. They have played they're 2-0 in region. They have played Millard thus far and beat them both games. They've scored 36 runs and given up 34 early in the season. So the Kanab Cowboys.
All right. Let's move on to the Beavers.
Beavers currently right now, they got 8 games in thus far. Yeah. 8. So normally teams play, 22?
21, 22 games. So they're a third of the way done.
Darn near, halfway done. Good for them. The Beavers finished last year 15-12, 7 in the RPI. They were eliminated by Kanab in the quarterfinals. So they won a couple games in the playoffs. They scored 8 runs per game. Great pitching staff last year, 3rd in 2A. They only gave up 5 runs per game.
Yeah.
So the Beavers, they were a tough out last year. Kanab, like I said, got them in the quarterfinals, but the Beavers, they were a game last year. Returning contributors: Titan Fales, Bentley Bradshaw, Hoyt Bloomquist, Dallas Yardley, Deegan Bailey, Cutler Matheson. Mm-hmm. Newcomers: Deegan Blackner, Braden Evans, and Bodie Wheatley.
Excuse me. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 seniors as coach list as returning contributors.
Yeah, and if you know anything about Beaver baseball, they're all the same thing.
Another team that plays with enthusiasm and energy, the Beavers.
Yeah, and I saw them. We watched a little bit of their game in Monroe on Friday afternoon. It was a cold game, but man, they were just getting after it. I
had spoke to some Gunnison fans that were down in Kanab. the Cowboy Classic, the Chuck Wagon Classic earlier. And at the time, he was saying Gunnison was up on Beaver early. It was 4-0 or 4-1. But he said if you're sitting there watching the game with the enthusiasm Beaver was playing with, you would have thought the Beaver was winning. Mm-hmm. They are just very, very competitive, and they're confident in their play. And Beaver, even back when we were playing and coached, Beaver's always they are just a tough, competitive, in this instance, baseball team.
Yeah, and they've always been like that. Coach Carter,
they get after it.
They play with a little bit of chip on their shoulder.
Yes, they do.
And that's their identity. That's Beaver baseball. They've always been like that. They're one of those teams. They're gonna be in it all the time, and if not, it's gonna feel like they're in it all the time. So I think Beaver's one of those teams. I think they're gonna shock some people this year. They didn't have a great year last year. Traditional Beaver, they were a little bit off, but I think this year they're gonna make some waves.
Yeah, they've got every reason with the way they play, that they're tough defensively. They'll be fundamentally sound. Beaver's going to be a tough out.
Yep.
Moving on, Parowan Rams.
The Parowan Rams, the leader in unis every single year.
They do a great job. Coach Townsend does a fantastic job. Parowan, coming off a state championship bid last year.
Yeah.
They made a great run to the finals. They failed to the South Sevier Rams. Gave it a game effort. I think they lost in the first game of the finals, but it was a 12-9.
12-14, something like that. It was a shootout. I mean, you get to that. We'll talk about this throughout the season. But you get to that point, and you got to score more runs than the other guy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, South Sevier scored more run that first game, but Parowan Rams were loaded last year.
Yeah, and that arguably the best pitcher in 2A was Shaden Benson. When he was on the mound, he's almost untouchable.
Yeah.
And batting wise, I mean, it was the same thing. I mean, they were just tough.
Yeah. So, let's go just from the beginning here. Reviewing last year, mm-hmm. They finished at 15-9, 7-3 in region. They finished 6th in the RPI. Postseason, they were 4-2 in the postseason. They eventually made it to the state championship. They got beat by South Sevier Rams. They scored 9 runs per game, which was 3rd in 2A. And they gave up only 5 runs per game, which was 4th in 2A. So they had the perfect combination of scoring a lot of runs and dynamic pitching.
Yeah, and offensively, Christian Bost, how do you say his last name?
Bost is what I've been
He was the catching from last year. Trevin Yardley.
They had I listed their seniors here: Trevin Yardley, Dawson Robb, Shaden Benson, Connor Robinson, Christian Bost, Jace Little.
Yes.
And our fantastic friend Bo Millett.
So
that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 seniors that all played last year.
They had Parowan had a great season last year, and I think they're ones. This is what I wish. I keep harping on this like a broken record. I think if you went back to the innings like that we used to, you could just pitch 14 innings. I think Parowan goes through that because Benson gets to go out and throw 2 games, where otherwise he throws 1.
Yeah,
he was down the stretch.
But he threw the first day,
yeah,
which would be Thursday. So he threw the quarterfinal. Is that right? Quarterfinals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Within the quarterfinal game, I should know who they played that game, but they obviously won that game. But then he's done.
Then he was done.
Like the dynamic guy throwing in 2A, you just see him for 4 innings or 5 innings, and that's it.
It's too bad.
Which unfortunate, but that parent, Coach Townsend had a very, very solid state championship worthy team last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they
and once they didn't start off super well in region. I don't think Shaden started off. Maybe he was, pitching wise, he didn't start off lighting things up. Mm-hmm. But once you got through that second run of region, or through the second half of region, he was lights out.
Oh yeah. If you ever sat behind the fence and watched him throw with that big left, only 6'8" coming down, I don't know how anybody ever hit off of him. And like I say, his bat was electric, and they were tough. And it just so happens that South Sevier scored 2 more runs than they did in the state championship. Otherwise, they would have had a state championship last year.
Yeah. So the Parowan Rams, I did get a chance to visit with Coach Townsend via text just to find out a little bit about the Rams. Because what I wanted to do, I first texted him. I said, "Am I reading this correctly? You've only played 1 game thus far," and that is correct. They've played 1 game. It was, I don't know, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it was in Delta. They got 1 game in, and all the other games have been rained out.
Yeah.
So they've practiced a very limited amount of time and get on the field for a game for one time. But he mentioned this is a hungry team, a team that still wants to not necessarily be in the shadows of last year's team. They don't want to be the team that, Parowan graduated everybody last year. This team's going to struggle. These guys are hungry. They want to go out and win.
Yeah.
And they got some solid players. Wyatt Hall, Hunter Johnson, Luke Millett, Matt Townsend is returning contributors from that team last year. Luke Millett's a big feller. Can you imagine him on the mound?
He pitched a lot last year. I didn't realize, watching him in basketball, I didn't realize how big he is.
He is a big dude.
He's massive.
Kind of a quiet guy, but man, he's going to do some good things for the Rams this year. Newcomers, Bowden McElprang, Kason Walker, and Porter Jackman. Mm-hmm. So Parowan, hopefully they'll get on the field soon. It will warm up at some point. It has to.
Yeah, it's going to.
But it'll be interesting to see. I asked Coach if they're going to be able to reschedule their games because they've lost out on a fair amount of games, and they're hoping to. But obviously you got to get region games in first before you start making up the other preseason games. But that could be a struggle moving forward, is how teams are going to get all their games in.
Interesting enough, as I was going through UHSA policies the other day, it lists the minimum number of games that you have to play to qualify for a state tournament. And I could be mistaken. I need to go back and double check this. But I believe the minimum number of games was 12. So that, honestly, that could come into play this year.
That is interesting.
It was either 12 or 15. I need to double check that. But with all the weather we have this year, that could come into play with some teams this year.
And I'm actually looking forward to how Parowan does. They start off with Enterprise this week on their back-to-back double headers. So double headers, are they Wednesday, Fridays, I believe?
Yeah.
Tuesday, Fridays. That will be a big telltale if they can get those games in. I think, and Coach also mentioned they're already talking about how bad the weather could potentially be and what some adjustments for the scheduling might have to come into place. But the Parowan Rams, they open up against the Enterprise Wolves to start region off. So
yeah, they had some great games last year.
But yes, they did towards the end of the year. I mean, they had some with Randall going and Benson. Yeah. Those were fantastic games. So it'll be fun to see what the Rams can do. So we'll keep an eye on them. Next up, Milford Tigers.
Milford Tigers. Interesting enough, Milford.
Welcome. Our new addition to the fourth row production squad, Hoss Hill.
From the UK.
Welcome, Hoss.
Via Bristol. Or Wales. You claim Bristol or Wales? Wales. He's a Wales fan.
He's new to this, so he's walking in all quiet and trying not to make any noise, and he'll get it figured out here.
So Milford is an interesting team. So it would have been 2019 that Milford won the state championship. Is that correct?
It would have been about that time, yes.
So it was the year before the COVID year. So they're 3 years removed from being a state championship team. They struggled a little bit last year. They were 6-17, number 10 in 2A. They got eliminated by Millard. But Milford is one of those teams that you just never know what you're going to get with them.
Well, they got tough-nosed players.
They do.
They grind things out. They would remind me of a team similar to a Duchesne or a Beaver, a team that's just they're tough-nosed. They compete. They grind things out. They're mentally tough. They're football kids, so they can make some noise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see what they got here. Offensively, they scored 5 runs per game, gave up 9.
Yeah, and I think that's what really got them last year. They lacked a lot of pitching and defense. Offense, you're scoring 5 runs a game. Unfortunately, you're just not going to win a lot.
Returning contributors, Trey Rose, fantastic football player and basketball player, senior. Tayton Sullivan, Taylor Dotson, Kilo Sosi, quarterback, so I'm assuming he's a pitcher.
Yeah.
Sadler Barnes, newcomers Colton Barnes, Toby LaOrange, and Judd Netto.
Surprising they have some Barnes kids on there.
Imagine that.
Shocker.
They had someone when they won the championship a few years ago.
Yeah. The one thing I expect, Milford's always going to be a tough out. If I know anything about them, good, solid. They're going to hit the ball. If they can get some pitching, I think they're going to be tough.
Last team, only 6 teams in the West region, the Millard Eagles. The Fighting Dakota Bullocks.
I will have to tell you this. So I went out and watched them yesterday. I watched the last half of their game with Gunnison. Gunnison got them. But I walked around as the game was getting over, and Coach Bullock he had his guys. So I was close enough to the fence I could hear. And I was pumped. He said, guys, listen, I know we dropped this game, but we're playing well. He said we've already surpassed our win total from last year, and it's only March 18th. This was yesterday. And afterwards, I got him. He's like, we're just trying to get by. I'm like, no, Coach, I was pumped listening to you. If I'm on your team, I'm thinking we're making progress. And he said, we're right in games. We're making some mistakes, but we're good enough that we can beat teams. They got some athletes. I think if some things go right for them, Millard's always had a good baseball tradition going. They won some state titles back in the day, but they've always had a solid tradition. I think Dakota's the guy. I really do, to get those guys going.
Well, it has to start from the top, and has to start from the coaching staff. If your coach is a poo head when you have a 3-19 year, kids easily check out. Mm-hmm. But he was very energetic. He was excited about his team all throughout the year. Last year, we would get messages from him, and I think he's really excited about his team this year. So I think you got the right guy there. He's an alum of Millard. Mm-hmm. Played a lot of good baseball, great pitcher. So I think you got the right guy there to lead this team. They finished, like I said, last year they were 3-19, so they took it on the chin last year. 0-10 in region, finished 11 in the RPI, but like you mentioned, they made a run at the playoffs last year. Made it to Kearns.
And I remember specifically seeing them at Kearns, and granted they got beat, but he's like, our guys got here. And that is so important. I think that goes with basketball or anything else. You got to get on the big stage. Mm-hmm. And the kids got there, and I think they got a taste of what that was like to be in that setting. Kearns is one of the best settings around, especially they're playing on a Thursday. I think they played on a Thursday or Friday. And there's lots of people there on that beautiful field. The kids got a taste of what it's like. I think that's made a big difference. He was so pumped last year.
So they're they're sitting at 4-4.
Yeah.
They had 3 wins last year. They got 4 this year. So good for them. They've scored 40 runs, and they've given up 44. End up with your 4-4 record.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, Miller's excited to be sitting at 4-4 right now.
Yeah, and given the layout of everything this year, they could find themselves back playing. I think the state tournaments at UVU this year. They could find themselves back playing at UVU. That's what you have to do.
Absolutely. Coach lists key contributors returning: Hunter Rhodes, the do-it-all. We know him very, very well. Morgan Wade, Taylor Davies, also another basketball kid we know well, and newcomers Hunter Stott, sophomore.
They got a lot of. They just look like baseball kids. When I saw them yesterday, they just look. And Millard, they got a lot of those big football kids that play too, but I think they got some good things going on at Millard High School.
Like it. That's our region breakdowns.
Yeah,
got to blew through those quick, but
it's amazing when you only have 2 regions how quick you can.
I kind of had to get this done. It's not the most exciting thing, but factually just had to get it done. Break these regions up here. Yeah. Let's move on to what you say really matters.
Let's move on to what really matters, and that's the Power 5. I have failed to really mention a lot of our sponsors. I've been a little bit lacking so far in basketball. We gotten a roll. This year, as always, our Power 5 will be sponsored by our good friends at Barney Trucking. Keeping the lights on here in Utah, keeping that coal moving around. If you want to drive one of the big, beautiful blue or white trucks, reach out to them at barneyjobs.com.
All of our sponsors have been fantastic.
They've been so good.
Can't thank them enough.
Yeah. So let's roll through the Power 5. We'll get back in the flow here. We're still trying to turn the page and figure out what things are going on here. Let's start at the bottom with our dark horses. Things are shuffled up a little bit. We have 2 dark horses for this week. First of all, I'm throwing the Millard Eagles in there.
Why not? They're sitting at 4-4.
I think they've got some good momentum. I feel like they've got a team that, by definition, they are sitting on the outside. Some things have to happen to make it work, but I think Millard could be that team that could knock somebody off down the road. So
currently played 8 games, sitting at 4-4. Hard to argue against them being a dark horse at this point.
Yeah. The other dark horse that I have for this week is the Duchesne Eagles. We had them in the Power 5 last week. I've dropped them down just a little bit. They're still right there. If you followed us at all, you know while the Power 5 works and the dark horse, we're saying these are teams that could go and compete for a state title. I think Duchesne is one of those. If everything falls into place and the right pieces get there, they can still go make a run. Mm-hmm. They've got enough offense. They've got enough experience. They can do that.
Before you move on, one other team, just because I had highlighted them, is on my sheet here, and maybe we can throw them as a dark horse on our dark horse list. Sorry, Parowan. Mm-hmm. They haven't even played any games yet.
Yeah,
is Parowan going to be knocking on the door? Yes, Parowan's going to be knocking on the door. They just haven't played any games,
right?
So. Don't worry, Parowan. We're going to get you there.
Yeah, well, and I would just say the one thing we talked about this is they've got a fantastic coaching staff. They've got a good tradition. You know they're going to win some games.
Yeah,
it's just
they're going to win a lot of games.
Parowan traditionally, year after year after year, they're always competing all the time. So a lot of this is so early that, like you say, Parowan's played one game. Monticello hasn't played a game. Beavers played eight games.
Yeah, so
it's early. We're still kind of muddling. I should almost say this is way too early to even pick.
Still crazy to say that. Still a little early, but anyway, I didn't mean to interject. Show you, but
that's good because I do think there are some teams. There are going to be 3 or 4 teams that kind of move around in that dark horse arena every week, just based on who's playing games that week.
Yeah.
So that was good. All right, let's move to number 5, the Enterprise Wolves. I had them at number 2 last week. They're 4-4 on the season. They dropped a couple games over the weekend. They got bit by South Severe. South Severe's tough.
South Severe 10-run them.
They 10-run them. They were right in that game. They were up early, and then South Severe just came roaring back. Enterprise is still a team that can compete. I think if they can figure out what their lineup is going to be, if they can get Brady healthy, get him back in the lineup, that changes a lot in their outfield.
Yeah.
And if they can get a solid core of pitchers going, I think Enterprise is going to be tough as always.
Yes.
So Enterprise at number 5. Number 4, I'm going to go with our hometown Gunnison Bulldogs.
Boom.
They watching them over the weekend, I think they've really improved from last year. A lot of kids had some experience last year. They're coming back. They've got a key group of guys. If their pitching can stay solid, I think they're going to score enough runs that they're going to beat people.
Yeah, I think defensively they're going to be good and they're going to score runs.
Yeah.
It's just the pitching.
Yeah. So if their pitching holds up, I'm excited to see what the Bulldogs can do. We know this. They've got a fantastic tradition here in Gunnison of baseball, and I think the kids recognize that. There's a good vibe. There was a good vibe out there on Saturday.
It'd be nice to see Max back on the UVU field.
Yeah.
That would be very good.
We have some good memories there at UVU, so it'd be nice to see them back. Number 3, I think this is probably one of the hottest teams right now, and that's the Beavers.
Well, they're sitting 6-2 and 1-0 in region, so you've got to get them up there.
And given the way this year is, the fact that they're getting games in, they played 8 games, they're getting that experience. If they can keep that going, watch out. The Beavers could be a scary team.
Did they play a lot of games down south early?
Yeah, they played a lot of them down south, yeah. In fact, the first region game when they played Enterprise, they actually had to move it down to Hurricane to play. And even then, it was rainy, but they got it in. So they've been lucky enough that they have got 8 games. Actually, they've got 8 games in. Gunnison's got 7 games in. Enterprise got 8 games in. Parowan's got 1, and Monticello has 0.
Yeah.
So, number 3, the Beavers. Number 2, I'm sticking with the Kanab Cowboys. They're 3-2. I like what the Cowboys have. I still think they've got the mojo. They've got the team to do it. They haven't really been able to get out and really get going yet. They're only 3-2. But we'll see what they have to offer. I'm really excited about Coach Brinkerhoff. I think he's going to instill a lot of energy in that team. And those young guys, I think they're going to really perform. Time will tell, but right now I'm keeping Kanab at number 2.
I like it.
And number 1, I don't think this is any secret, South Severe Rams.
You got to go with them. I mean, the target's on their back, but they've earned the spot.
Yeah, and as I was texting Coach Baker today, he says, I'm already seeing some good things. They dropped down early both to Enterprise and to Delta. I was watching the Delta game, and they dropped down early 4-0. There was no panic. they're just a machine. They just kind of keep going on. I think they've got those kids that played enough baseball. They realize, hey, even a 7-inning game, there's a lot of baseball to play. You get down early. They don't panic. They got a great offense.
Well, for a great team that's got a great offense, yeah, you're gonna score runs. Sometimes that might come in the 5th, 6th, 7th inning when the other team wears out, but you're gonna put up runs.
Yeah. So for a team who their first games were this weekend, they had just that's the way the schedule was. This was their first weekend to play.
Thought my TV was gonna pop off, but it's still going.
Oh, that was close. I thought we were almost at an hour. We can usually tell when we're almost at an hour. But I like South Sevier. Until we always say this, until they get knocked off, they're the number one team.
Yeah.
And the challenge again, when I talked to a couple of folks out there, is can they get games in? Like everybody else.
Wild, yeah. I was just looking real quick to see. I was just curious as to what Kanab opens up. The region schedule opens up with this week. So we are. What is the date?
Today is the 20th. Excuse me, the 19th.
19th. So they're heading. Kanab's heading south this week. So they got potentially a game against Water Canyon. Then they head south.
Excuse me.
Where are those games at? Red, white, and blue invitational. Wonder where that's at. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
You're
just
good.
Looking at the schedule there.
Yeah, so I know there's a crazy cold front moving in this week. I know a lot of games, Central Utah and Northern Utah, are probably going to be affected again. Hopefully we can get those in. But just to run down, excuse me, I got something in my throat now.
Get her out.
Run down the Power 5 again from this week. Dark horse is Duchesne Millard. We're going to throw the Pair 1 Rams in there as well. Number 5, Enterprise. Number 4, Gunnison Valley. Oh, goodness. Holy cow, I don't know what's going on here. Let's start that over. Number 5, Enterprise Wolves. 4, Gunnison Valley Bulldogs. 3, Beaver Beavers. 2, Kanab Cowboys. And number 1 for the second week in a row, South Sevier Rams.
I'm just looking at South Sevier. This week they're scheduled for region matchups at Monticello. Be surprised if that happens at Monticello. That's on the 21st. And then at North Sevier, as long as it's good weather, they should be able to get that in. North Sevier's field has been cleared. They played this weekend. So you got Monticello and North Sevier coming up for the number 1 South Sevier Rams.
All right.
There you go.
All right. Closing thoughts for tonight.
Closing thoughts. I'm glad we had got this podcast out of the way. This is one that is kind of a grinder. You got to get through it, kind of set the stage for our East versus West. As Andy's having a coughing heart attack over here, the stage is set now. Mm-hmm. I think this, South Sevier obviously has the target on their back as the returning champions, but other than that, you got a wide open field. I think both regions are very, very competitive. You got some teams that are going to struggle in both regions, perhaps, but everybody other than South Sevier, I think they're going to be battling. Oh, yeah. So it's going to be wide open.
Yeah, my closing.
You have to close this off before.
Holy cow! I would just say my closing thought for this year. I think more so than any, we haven't seen weather like this for quite a while.
That is very true,
and I hope it doesn't. But I think it's going to affect a lot of things down the road.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. I hate to see that happen, but
holy cow!
We have to grind through this season. Hopefully, get to May where we can at least play with some hoodies on.
Yeah. So the other thing, with that weather, early season, it affects hitting, it affects fielding. I think more importantly, it affects arms. Like cold weather, it's just not good to go out and throw. So it'll be interesting to see what teams can power through this for the season.
I think the mentally tough ones will. The mentally tough ones that want to win and stay in it to the end. And I think generally those that always fit into the Power 5 consistently, those are the ones that are going to grind it out.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you being with us here tonight. Again, this is kind of a grind.
One other thought that I had. Coaches are excited this season.
Oh, yeah, they're pumped.
We've had a chance to see them in person or text or email or whatever. Coaches are very excited to get going. Baseball coaches they're just baseball coaches. Basketball, they're two different cultures, and the coaches are kind of different personalities as well. Baseball coaches absolutely love to get after it.
Yeah, and I think part of that is they have to. They have like this 9-week season, and then it's over. So you don't have time. You don't have this grinder 2-month in the middle that we have in basketball. Yeah. There's no downtime. It's like once you hit go, you got to go hard, and then it's over. So yeah, everybody I talked to this weekend,
they're amped, ready to get going.
They're pumped.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be a quick, fast baseball season. let's hope the weather cooperates and we get some games in this week.
That's all for me.
We appreciate you joining us tonight on the Fourth Row. As always, please reach out to us if you have any information. Most importantly, I remember this from last year, it was easy for us to get basketball pitchers this last season because we had Peyton.
True, yes.
If anybody has any good baseball pitchers or access to some, please let us know because sometimes they're hard to get to.
I know Duchesne has a fantastic photographer
does,
that does get a lot of their photos, but anybody else?
I know Gunnison has one too.
Yeah. Yes.
So we can always get Gunnison stuff. Max's wife, Mackenzie, is a fantastic photographer. They always have a lot. But if anybody else out has anything we'd like to share, we can throw it up on our website, throw us up on social media, let us know.
100%.
Well, we appreciate you joining us for the Fourth Row. As always, reach out to us. If you have any questions, comments, let us know. So for the coach, Benny Hill, I'm Andy Hill, and for the Fourth Row, we're out.
Thank you for spending your time with the Fourth Row. For more information, check out our website at fourthrowmedia.com or send us a message through any of our social media channels.